A devoted janitor scrubs dishes every night, hiding a desperate secret. His grandson needs a $40 million heart transplant, or he won't survive. As time runs out and funds fall short, every moment becomes a race against death, revealing a gripping tale of sacrifice, hope, and the fight to beat impossible odds. Let's dive into the story. The clang of metal and a sharp yelp broke the midnight hush of the kitchen. Alfred Mendoza yanked his hand back from the industrial sink, crimson dripping from a deep gash across his palm. Dishwater swirled pink as he stumbled back, hissing through clenched teeth. A shattered ceramic plate lay in the sink like a broken promise, jagged and cruel. The steam from the running water fogged his glasses, but the pain kept him grounded, reminded him why he was here, why he couldn't stop, not even for a minute. He grabbed a dish towel from the rack, already stiff with soap residue and old grease, and pressed it against his bleeding hand. He winced but didn't stop. One-handed, he resumed scrubbing the stack of greasy pans piled beside the sink. The hiss of hot water, the clatter of metal, the stifling heat of the kitchen, all of it wrapped around him like chains. But he moved with determination. He didn't need sympathy. He needed time, more hours, more work, anything to scrape together the money he needed, anything to keep Milo alive. $40 million, he whispered hoarsely, like a prayer cast into boiling water. $40 million to keep you breathing, Mijo. He glanced up at the rusted clock above the pantry door. 1:26 a.m. Another late night, the third in a row. The restaurant had closed at 11, but Alfred had volunteered to clean the back prep area, something that wasn't even in his job description. He had to make himself indispensable. Every extra peso mattered. Behind the locked supply door, tucked inside a battered blue lunchbox beneath cans of industrial soap, was a secret. Dozens of envelopes packed tight with a few dollars he managed to save each night. Some envelopes had coins in them. Others had small bills, creased and damp from sweat. None had more than $20, but together they meant hope. 7 months. 7 months of scrubbing, hauling trash, unclogging drains, and enduring the whispers of waitstaff who never bothered to learn his name. Every cent he saved was for Milo. Milo, his 8-year-old grandson, lay in a hospital room across town with a failing heart. Tubes ran from his nose, his chest, his arm. Machines beeped and blinked around him like stars in a night sky that never went dark. His skin was pale, almost translucent, his voice barely louder than a breath. Yet every time Alfred visited, Milo smiled. "I'm going to play soccer with you again, Grandpa," he whispered, over and over, like a mantra of hope. Alfred had nodded and promised. Promised with fierce, wordless vow. The doctors had delivered the news without ceremony. Restrictive cardiomyopathy. Rare, aggressive, fatal without a transplant. And transplants cost money. More money than Alfred could fathom. 40 million pesos. The number might as well have been a billion. But Alfred didn't let himself be defeated. He wasn't educated. He wasn't young. But he was stubborn, and he loved that boy more than his own life. A sudden crash startled him. A stack of trays teetered on a shelf nearby and clattered to the floor. He sucked in a breath and hurried to gather them, blood from his palm leaving faint smears on the steel. "Get it together," he muttered. His Spanish-accented voice barely echoed in the cavernous kitchen. The pain in his hand pulsed like a drumbeat, but he ignored it. He'd had worse. Factory accidents, decades ago. Frostbite, arthritis. This was different. This was pain with purpose. The kitchen had long since emptied. The chefs had gone home. The line cooks, the servers, the hostesses, all vanished into the velvet night of Manhattan. Only Alfred remained, pushing himself past exhaustion. He didn't even clock in tonight. They didn't know he was here. That's when it happened. A door slammed behind him. He froze, dish halfway into the rinse sink. Water dripped from his fingertips. Footsteps echoed across the kitchen tiles. He recognized the cadence. Heavy, deliberate. Someone important. Voices followed. Low, sharp. One male, one female. "Did you check his locker?" the man asked. Alfred turned off the water, suddenly ice cold. Something's off about him. He's always here late. Never asked for breaks. "Who does that?" The woman's voice replied, Quieter. You think it's him? A pause. Just check. I don't want this blowing up in my face. Footsteps retreated. A door creaked open. Alfred's breath caught in his throat. They were talking about him. He quickly wiped his hands on his apron and crept toward the hallway. His locker was just around the corner. He had locked it tight, as always. Inside was the lunchbox. His savings. Milo's future. What if they found it? Would they think he was stealing? Would they call the police? His heart pounded. Sweat slid down his back. His shoes squeaked on the tile. He stopped short, pressing his back to the wall. The voices continued. More footsteps. Then silence. Alfred edged closer, peeked around the corner. His locker door was open. The lunchbox lay on the ground. One of the envelopes had been ripped open, its contents spilling onto the tile like a confession. "What the hell is this?" the man muttered. He picked up the lunchbox, rifled through it. The woman spoke. "It's cash. Envelopes. Old bills. Some of them have dates. Notes, look." She held up a paper. It was scribbled in Alfred's careful hand. Para Milo. Cada centavo cuenta. For Milo, every cent counts. The man stood still. This isn't theft money. This is something else. Alfred stepped into the light. "It's for my grandson," he said quietly. The two turned, startled. Alfred stood tall despite the blood on his hand and the exhaustion in his eyes. "He needs a heart transplant. 40 million pesos. I don't steal. I just clean. I just save." Silence stretched. The man looked at him for a long time. Finally, he said, "Come with me. I think we need to talk." The man who had spoken, broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, led Alfred out of the kitchen and down a narrow hallway that curved behind the walk-in freezer. Alfred glanced back once, seeing the woman carefully place the envelopes and lunchbox back in his locker. Her expression was unreadable. He followed silently until they entered a modest office tucked behind the staff lounge. A single desk lamp glowed atop a cluttered desk, highlighting stacks of receipts, folders, and a half-finished cup of coffee. The nameplate read, "Martin Brandt, General Manager." Brandt motioned to a metal chair across from him, then sat down heavily in his creaky leather one. He gestured toward Alfred's hand. "Do you need a hospital for that?" Alfred shook his head. "It'll stop." "Stitches." "I can't afford to stop working." Brandt nodded slowly, watching him. "I've seen you here almost every night. You never complain. You take double shifts when people call out. And you never clock overtime. Why?" Alfred glanced down at his palms. The wound had stopped bleeding, but the cut was deep. "I didn't want to draw attention." Brandt leaned back, arms crossed. "What's going on, Mendoza?" So Alfred told him. Not everything. Not yet, but enough. He told him about Milo, the fainting spell at school, the ambulance, the first terrifying night at the hospital, the diagnosis that stole the color from his daughter Elena's face, the impossible number the doctors gave them, the transplant list, the costs, the months slipping away like sand through tired fingers. "I send what I can to the hospital," Alfred finished, voice low. "But it's not enough, not even close." Brandt exhaled, long and slow. He rubbed his temples. "Why didn't you come to me?" Alfred shook his head. Pride, maybe shame, and I didn't think anyone would care. Silence stretched between them. Then, quietly, Brandt reached for a notepad and jotted something down. "We'll put you on payroll for those extra hours, retroactively, at least 2 months back, and hazard pay for tonight." Alfred blinked. "You do that?" Brandt looked up, his face unreadable. "It's not charity. It's justice. You earned it." A knock at the door interrupted them. The woman who had searched his locker stepped in, holding the lunchbox like it was made of glass. "I sealed the envelopes. Didn't count the cash," she said. She extended the box to Alfred. "I'm sorry we went through your things." Alfred accepted it, nodding. "I understand." Brandt looked between them. "This is Elisa, assistant GM. She's going to help with what comes next." "What comes next?" Alfred asked cautiously. Brandt leaned forward. "You need 40 million pesos. You're never going to earn that scrubbing dishes." Alfred's throat tightened. But, Brand continued, this restaurant belongs to the Argent Group. You know who owns them. Alfred shook his head. Elena Devereux, billionaire, philanthropist. She has a soft spot for stories like yours. Alfred frowned. Why would someone like her care about me? Brant shrugged. I don't know, but she's coming to town next week. And if I can get your story in front of her, maybe she'll help. Elisa stepped forward. She's holding a benefit dinner. High profile. Private. I can get you on staff that night. Alfred looked between them, hesitant. You want me to serve food? Not just food, Elisa said. Hope. If she meets you, sees what you've been doing, who knows? Brand added, at the very least, it's a chance. Better than drowning here in silence. Alfred clutched the lunchbox to his chest. He thought of Milo's paper-thin smile, of the hollow beep of the machines, of the long hallway in the hospital that smelled like bleach and sadness. He nodded once. I'll do it. Brant smiled faintly. Good. Let's get to work. Outside, the city breathed its ceaseless rhythm. But for the first time in months, Alfred Mendoza allowed himself to feel something close to hope. Alfred stepped out into the night air. The kitchen heat, still clinging to his skin like a second shirt. The streets were quieter now. The clamor of the dinner rush long gone, replaced by distant sirens and the occasional honk from the avenue. He carried the lunchbox tucked firmly under his arm, like it was something sacred. The city never really slept, but this hour, this thin ribbon of time between exhaustion and dawn, felt like it belonged to him. He didn't head home yet. Instead, he walked. There was a hospital just 10 blocks away, not the one where Milo stayed, but a place that buzzed with the same ghostly energy. He paused across from its brightly lit entrance, watching the automatic doors slide open and shut. Someone cried on the curb, their body curled into their knees. Another person paced in frantic circles near a vending machine, phone pressed tightly to their ear. Alfred swallowed the lump in his throat. He thought of Elena, his daughter, curled in a chair by Milo's bed, afraid to even blink in case she missed something. He thought of the doctor's voice, low and calm, as he explained condition, restrictive cardiomyopathy. Milo's heart muscle was too stiff. It wouldn't fill with blood properly. It was rare, dangerous, lethal without intervention. And the intervention cost 40 million pesos. Alfred turned and started walking again. He counted his steps, not to calm himself, but to stay grounded. By the time he reached his apartment, the number was over 2,000. The building was old, paint peeling, plumbing moody, but rent was cheap, and it was close to both the restaurant and the hospital. He eased open the front door as quietly as he could. Elena was asleep on the sofa, one arm draped over a stuffed animal Milo had once carried everywhere. A small overnight bag sat near the door, ready for when she returned to the hospital. Alfred didn't wake her. He stepped into the kitchen, placed a lunchbox on the counter, and then walked into the cramped bedroom. There, taped on the wall, was a drawing Milo had made in his hospital bed, a family portrait. He'd written in block letters beneath it, "My grandpa is a hero." Alfred sat on the edge of the bed and wept quietly. The next day, Alfred returned to the restaurant early. Brant and Elisa were already waiting for him in the back office. "You'll need a new uniform," Elisa said. Hand him a neatly folded tuxedo shirt and black slacks. "For the benefit, you'll be part of the banquet floor crew." "I've never done anything like that," Alfred said. "Then we'll teach you," Brant replied. "You've got a week." Elisa opened a schedule. "You'll shadow Mario during breakfast, then Ramon for the dinner service. Both are veterans. Watch them. Learn fast. We'll go over table etiquette, wine service, everything. It'll be grueling, but you've done worse." Alfred nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." She smiled faintly. "That's what I thought." He changed into his new uniform that afternoon. The fabric felt foreign, too crisp, too clean. But when he stepped into the dining area carrying a tray of empty glasses, he walked taller. Mario, a wiry man with salt and pepper hair and a booming voice, raised a brow at him. "You're the dishwasher, right?" Alfred nodded. "Was." Mario chuckled. "Hope you got good knees. Let's see if you can keep up." He could. It wasn't elegant, not at first, but Alfred paid attention. He copied posture, mirrored movements, absorbed every piece of advice Mario threw at him. He practiced folding napkins until his fingers ached. He polished silverware until he could see his reflection. After the shift, he returned to the sink, scrubbing the day's dishes. He didn't complain. Brant passed by, pausing for a moment. "You're making an impression." Alfred nodded, water sloshing around his elbows. "1 week," Brant reminded him. "Then you meet Elena Devereux." Alfred swallowed hard. "What if she says no?" Brant was quiet. Then he said, "What if she doesn't?" That night, Alfred returned home to find Elena awake, sipping tea at the kitchen table. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she managed to smile. "Milo asked for you," she said softly. Alfred sank into the chair beside her. "I'll go tomorrow. Early." He drew another picture. Alfred's eyes met hers. "This time, it was you, standing in front of the castle, wearing a crown." Alfred laughed softly, despite the tightness in his chest. He always had a wild imagination. Elena reached across the table, grasping his hand. "We're going to save him, Dad." He didn't answer. He just held on tighter. The next morning, Alfred arrived at the restaurant 2 hours early. The sun had barely risen, but he was already standing outside the staff entrance, uniform freshly ironed, shoes polished, hands trembling slightly. Elisa raised an eyebrow when she saw him. "You're early." "Didn't sleep much," Alfred said. She didn't ask why. Instead, she nodded toward the storage room. "Set up the banquet carts. Fold the linens. Mario will join you soon." Alfred moved quickly. Every napkin he folded, every fork he polished, felt like a step towards saving Milo. His movements were clumsy at times, but his determination never wavered. Mario appeared just as Alfred finished organizing the wine glasses. "Ready to learn how to glide instead of stomp?" he asked, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Alfred nodded. "More than ready." They spent the morning walking the floor. Mario demonstrated the subtle dance of serving, how to anticipate a guest's needs, how to disappear and reappear with elegance. Alfred mimicked his steps, awkward at first, but improving with each repetition. "You've got the heart," Mario admitted by lunch. "Just need to smooth the edges." That afternoon, Alfred practiced lifting trays with Ramon, who was shorter but twice as fast. "You're going to sweat through 3 shirts doing this job," he warned. "Fine by me," Alfred said, panting, "as long as I'm still standing." Each day melted into the next. Breakfast shifts became lunch shifts. Dish duty came at the end, long after the floor had cleared. Alfred's feet ached. His arms cramped. But every hour earned men another peso, another tiny step toward that impossible 40 million. One night, as he exited the staff room with his lunchbox, he found Elisa waiting near the employee lockers. "I've been thinking," she said, eyes unreadable, "about your story, about your grandson." Alfred stiffened. "I didn't mean to put pressure on you." "No, it's not that," she interrupted. "It's just, there's something about the way you carry this place. Like it's more than work to you." "It is," he replied. "It's a lifeline." She nodded slowly. "Well, the benefit gala is 3 days away, and you'll be on the main service team." Alfred blinked. "Seriously? You earned it." He didn't know what to say. His throat tightened. "Thank you. You'll wear the black vest. That means you're on the floor with the guests. Don't fumble it." He smiled. "I won't." At home, Alfred opened his locker of keepsakes and pulled out a photo of Milo from last year. The boy was laughing, a paper crown askew on his head, holding a toy spaceship. A pang of grief hit him, but not without hope. For the first time in weeks, something felt possible. He packed the photo carefully into his coat pocket. The next morning, Alfred arrived to find a different kind of energy in the restaurant. Workers were erecting a stage. New crystal chandeliers had been brought in. Tables were set with shimmering china, each plate more expensive than Alfred's entire kitchen set at home. Brant caught him staring. "It's for the donors. They expect royalty treatment." "I'll make sure they get it," Alfred said. Brant smirked. "You'd better." Elisa joined them, clipboard in hand. "Tomorrow we do the rehearsal. Full service. Full dress." Alf, you'll be at table 4, Devereux's table. His heart skipped. You mean? Yes, the woman who can write the check that saved your grandson. Alfred nodded slowly. Understood. Don't pitch her. Don't beg, Brant said, suddenly stern. Just serve like a professional. If she notices you, let it be because you do your job flawlessly. I will, Alfred said. That night, he went to hospital. Milo was asleep when he entered the room, a small tube in his nose and his chest rising shallowly. Elena looked up and offered a soft smile. Still fighting, she whispered. Alfred leaned over and kissed Milo's forehead. He's stronger than we ever knew. He pulled out the photo from his coat and tucked it beneath Milo's pillow. You keep that spaceship dream alive, okay? He murmured. I'm going to take care of the rest. Elena reached out and took his hand. I saw a news headline today, she said. Some billionaire heiress is funding heart surgeries for kids overseas. A woman named Devereux. Alfred's breath caught. Elena didn't notice. I just hope people like that remember boys like Milo. He smiled faintly. I think they do. He didn't tell her that in less than 72 hours, he would be standing right in front of that very woman, balancing a tray, his whole world riding on a silent chance. The day of the rehearsal arrived, cloaked in tension. Alfred stepped into the restaurant, already dressed in his crisp black vest and starched white shirt. His hands were steady, but a thunderstorm brewed quietly in his chest. The dining room had been transformed. Golden drapes lined the walls. Violins played softly in the background as the catering staff buzzed like bees in a gilded hive. Alfred could hardly recognize the place where he had scrubbed grease off pots just weeks ago. Move with intention. Elisa instructed the staff as they gathered in a huddle. Tonight's dry run is our only chance to mess up. Tomorrow we don't miss. She met Alfred's eyes. You ready? He nodded. Yes, ma'am. Mario passed him a tray of mock flutes filled with sparkling water. Let's hope we don't drop any of these. Devereux hates accidents. Alfred managed a smile. Noted. He practiced his walk down the aisles, balancing the tray on his fingertips like a tightrope artist. He stopped at each assigned table, reciting silently. Smile gently, never stare. Offer, don't insist. Watch their eyes. As he moved through the room, he caught sight of a tall woman in a midnight blue dress inspecting the place settings. That's her, whispered Ramon as he passed behind Alfred. Devereux, the one. Alfred's breath caught. The woman was regal, poised, not with arrogance, but quiet control. Her assistant trailed her like a shadow, taking notes as she gestured toward the placement of the dessert forks. Alfred watched her only for a second before redirecting his eyes. He wasn't supposed to engage. He wasn't here as a grandfather. He was here as a professional. But still, he wondered, what kind of person had that kind of power? Could a woman like that be moved by something more than presentation and polish? That night, after the rehearsal, Alfred stayed behind to help clean. He didn't have to. No one expected him to. But his nerves needed the rhythm of wiping and stacking, scrubbing and sorting. Mario found him polishing a tray near midnight. You're going to wear a hole in that silver, viejo. Alfred chuckled. Just try to make sure tomorrow goes perfectly. Mario leaned against the counter. You've done everything you could. Now it's up to fate or luck, or whatever it is that tips the world one way or another. I don't believe in luck, Alfred said. Just grace. And preparation. Mario stared at him for a beat. You ever think about what happens if she doesn't help? Alfred paused. Every day. But I have to believe someone will. Maybe her. Maybe someone watching her. All I can do is stay on my feet until then. Later that night, Alfred stood outside the hospital under a street lamp, looking up at Milo's room on the 7th floor. The light was on. Elena's silhouette moved behind the curtain. He whispered to the night, one more day. Then he walked home, his shadow long and quiet on the pavement. The day of the gala dawned with a nervous hush. Alfred could hardly eat breakfast. The weight of hope made his coffee taste bitter. He dressed with care, fingers slightly trembling as he buttoned the collar of his crisp white shirt and slipped into black vest with reverence. Elena texted him a photo of Milo just before he left. The boy was pale but smiling faintly, a stuffed astronaut doll tucked under one arm. "Be brave, Grandpa. You've got this," the message read. Alfred tucked the phone into his pocket and stepped out the door, the weight of that smile pressing warm and heavy against his chest. The restaurant was transformed into a glittering kingdom. A red carpet led to grand doors, where a doorman stood stiffly in a tuxedo. Inside, chandeliers threw soft light onto tables set with gleaming gold-rimmed china, while a string quartet played in the corner. Guests trickled in slowly, each one more finely dressed than the last. There were murmurs of wealth in every movement, diamond earrings that caught the light like fire, tuxedos tailored to perfection. Alfred stood silently with the rest of the staff, lined up as Elisa gave final instructions. Her voice was firm but encouraging. "Tonight, we host not just a gala, but a performance. Every moment must be flawless. No dropped dishes. No delays. You represent the gilded vine. Make it shine." Her eyes found Alfred. "You're on Devereaux's table. She'll be seated at 8 sharp. Don't speak unless spoken to." Alfred nodded, pressing his nerves down like coals under steel. By 7:30, the dining room hummed with quiet energy. Servers moved like clockwork. Laughter floated in the air, mixed with the clink of glasses and the rustle of elegant gowns. Alfred stood near table 4, heart racing. He held a tray of hors d'oeuvres, watching for the moment she would arrive. At precisely 8:02 p.m., Catherine Devereux entered the room. She wore a shimmering silver dress and carried herself like royalty. Conversations dipped as people turned to greet her, some with polite applause. Alfred's palms sweated, but he tightened his grip on the tray. She reached the table, nodded at the other guests seated there, and lowered herself into a chair like a queen taking her throne. Alfred stepped forward. "Madam," he said softly, presenting the tray. Her eyes flicked his, just for a moment, and then down to the food. She selected a smoked salmon canopy, without a word. Alfred stepped back, heart pounding. Throughout the evening, he served with meticulous precision. He poured wine without spilling a drop. He cleared plates without so much as a whisper. Devereux barely acknowledged him, but once, when he refilled her glass, she murmured, "Thank you." It was a small thing, but to Alfred, it felt like a door cracking open. At dessert, she laughed softly at something a man beside her said. For a moment, Alfred caught her looking at the photograph tucked into her clutch. A young girl, smiling beside a boy in a wheelchair. His breath hitched. She has a child who's sick too. The gala host stepped onto the stage then, tapping the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Tonight, all proceeds go to pediatric medical research and treatment. Your generosity is rewriting futures." Polite applause followed. Devereux clapped, a faint smile curving her lips. As she turned back to her dessert, Alfred found himself moving closer, heart-hammering. He whispered, "Excuse me, ma'am. I apologize for speaking out of turn, but may I share something with you?" She glanced up, startled. Her assistant frowned. "Is there a problem?" Devereux raised a hand. "Go ahead." Alfred reached into his pocket and pulled out the photo of Milo, folded gently. "This is my grandson. He needs a heart transplant. 40 million pesos. I don't mean to ask for a favor, only to say thank you, because even just working here gave me hope." She took the photo. Her expression didn't change, but she didn't hand it back either. "What's his name?" she asked. "Milo." She looked at the photo for a long moment. "He looks brave." "He is." The assistant leaned in, murmuring something about schedules. Devereux nodded, then folded the photo and slipped it into her clutch. "You did well tonight," she said. "Thank you." And with that, she turned back to her table. Alfred stepped back, pulse roaring in his ears. He didn't know if he'd just made a mistake or a miracle. The gala ended past midnight. Alfred watched from the wings as the final guests filtered out beneath a sky littered with stars. Laughter and luxury faded behind the restaurant doors, leaving only the sound of glasses being cleared and silverware clinking into tubs. He moved quietly through the kitchen, helping the younger staff with cleanup, even though his shift technically ended hours ago. He needed to move, to keep his mind from circling the moment when Catherine Devereux had looked him in the eye and taken Milo's photo into her hands. Had he done the right thing? Or had he crossed a line that would cost him this job? Back in the locker room, Alfred changed out of his uniform. The starched vest and bow tie felt like armor being shed after a battle. He placed his shoes gently into his bag and sat down on the bench, hands trembling slightly from exhaustion and nerves. Elisa entered, her heels clicking against the tile. "You're still here?" she asked, folding her arms. He stood quickly. "Yes, ma'am. Just about to leave." She hesitated. "I heard what you did with Devereux." Alfred's heart stalled. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" She held up a hand. "Don't apologize. If it had been anyone else, I would have fired them." But she didn't complain. "In fact," she said, "you serve with dignity." Alfred blinked. "She also left this." Elisa handed him a small envelope with no name. Inside was a folded note written in elegant script. For Milo, bravery should never go unnoticed. Attached to it was a business card embossed in gold leaf. Catherine Devereux, founder, Devereux International Foundation. Alfred stared at it. His knees went weak. "She didn't say anything else," he whispered. Elisa shook her head. "Just told me you reminded her of someone." Alfred held the card, like it might dissolve. His thoughts blurred between disbelief and hope. When he returned home, Elena was still awake, sitting on the couch with a cup of tea and red-rimmed eyes. She looked up as he entered. "Well," she asked, voice strained. He showed her the envelope. Her hand flew to her mouth as she read the note, then the name. "Is this real?" she whispered. "I think so," he said. She didn't say she'd help, but she didn't say no either. They stared at each other, hope raw and terrifying. Milo stirred in his room, and they both rushed in. He was sweating, mumbling something in his sleep. Elena wiped his brow as Alfred sat beside the bed. "You hang on, soldier," he murmured. "Help might be coming." The next day, Alfred was called into the manager's office. He braced himself for the worst. Instead, he was told that a representative from Devereux International wanted to meet him, privately. Nervous, he traveled across the city to a glass building shaped like a shard of crystal. Inside, he was ushered into a conference room with leather chairs and a view that made the city look like a model village. A woman in a slate suit greeted him. Her handshake was warm but efficient. "Mr. Reyes, my name is Miranda Chun. Ms. Devereux asked me to speak with you regarding Milo." Alfred sat, heart pounding. "Yes." She was moved by her courage. "She doesn't make promises lightly, but she asked me to begin the process of evaluating your grandson's case. If it qualifies under the Foundation's Pediatric Emergency Program, we may be able to assist." Alfred's throat tightened. "You mean you might pay for his surgery?" "Not just pay," Miranda said. "We'd arrange for the best available cardiologist, and we'd fly him to Boston for the transplant if approved." Tears welled in Alfred's eyes. He tried to speak, but only managed a choked nod. "There are forms to complete, medical assessments, but we'll move quickly." He stood slowly, both overwhelmed and reverent. "Please tell Ms. Devereux, I don't know how to thank her." Miranda smiled. "Live, and help your grandson live. That's all she wants." Alfred left the building in a daze. For the first time in years, the city felt warm and bright. He walked the streets not as a janitor or an old man, but as a grandfather carrying a spark of a miracle. He called Elena from a street corner, his voice breaking. "Start packing. We may be going to Boston." She cried. He cried. And somewhere in a high-rise tower, Catherine Devereux read an update on her tablet and quietly smiled, thinking not of power or profit, but of a small boy named Milo with brave eyes and a stuffed astronaut. 3 weeks later, Alfred stood at gate 34 in an airport that smelled like burnt coffee and new beginnings. Elena sat nearby with Milo cradled against her shoulder, a thick blanket wrapped around the boy's frail frame. His skin had grown pale, but his eyes were bright with curiosity, darting around the terminal. The flight to Boston had been arranged by the Devereux Foundation. First-class seats, a private nurse traveling with them, the best pediatric hospital in the country, waiting on the other end. It all felt like a dream Alfred feared he'd wake from at any moment. As they boarded the plane, Alfred paused to look back at the city that had taken so much from him, but, in its strange way, had also brought salvation. He whispered a silent prayer of gratitude before stepping into the cabin. Boston was cold, sharp, and dignified. The hospital was a fortress of white and silver, pristine and humming with a quiet urgency. Doctors moved like soldiers, nurses like diplomats. Within hours of arrival, Milo had been admitted and placed under observation. Tests began. Scans, blood work, consultations. Dr. Ana Rivera, a tall woman with a calm intensity, became their anchor. She explained everything with the precision of a surgeon and the gentleness of a mother. Milo's case is rare, she said, showing them a diagram of the heart. But we've handled rarer. He's strong for his condition, and he qualifies for the transplant list. We'll do everything we can. Alfred sat beside Milo's bed each night, holding his grandson's hand through the beeping monitors and 4 lines. He read to him. Space books, always space books, and let Milo clutch his stuffed astronaut like a lifeline. Each morning, he would walk out of the room, wipe his face dry, and greet the nurses with a nod of steel. The wait was agonizing. Every hour was a question mark. Would a donor be found in time? Would Milo's heart hold out? One morning, as snow flurried against the window glass, Alfred stepped into the hospital chapel. It was small and quiet, filled with the smell of candles and polish. No priests, just benches and silence. He sat down and bowed his head. God, he said, voice cracking, I've worked every hour I could. I've asked for nothing. But I'm asking now. Let my boy live. If you need a deal, take the rest of my years. Just let him grow up. Let him see Mars. Let him fall in love someday. He didn't expect an answer. But when he returned to the room, he found Elena crying. They found one, she whispered. A match. A donor. Alfred's knees buckled. He sank into the chair, shaking with gratitude. The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. The night before the transplant, Alfred told Milo a story, one he'd never shared before. Did I ever tell you about your mom? He said. Milo shook his head. His voice was a whisper. Tell me. She was fierce, Alfred said, like fire and thunder. She used to climb trees like she had wings. She wanted to be an astronaut, just like you. What happened? Milo asked. Alfred's voice thickened. She got sick, and there was nothing I could do. I promised her I'd take care of you, no matter what. Milo looked at him with solemn eyes. You kept your promise, Grandpa. Alfred kissed his forehead. I'm trying, soldier. I'm trying so hard. The lights dimmed. The machines beeped steadily. Outside, snow kept falling. The hospital walls seemed to breathe as the transplant hour approached. Every minute crawled forward like a bead of sweat on Alfred's temple. Milo had been prepped and sedated. Elena stood near the operating room doors, holding Milo's stuffed astronaut close to her chest, clutching it as if it were Milo himself. Dr. Rivera met them outside the surgical suite. She wore a mask and cap, only her kind and determined eyes visible. We're ready, she said softly. It will take hours, but we'll do everything. Alfred nodded. Do more than everything. As Milo was wheeled inside, Alfred watched the doors close with a thud that echoed in his ribs. He sat down in the waiting area, next to Elena. Time dissolved. Hours lost meaning. Coffee cups emptied. Nurses passed with solemn nods. They spoke little. Words didn't matter now. Hope was a fragile candle. 7 hours into the operation, Dr. Rivera reappeared. Her scrubs were stained. Her face was lined with exhaustion. It's done, she said. The heart is in. It's beating. Alfred blinked. He made it. She nodded. He's not out of the woods, but he's alive. Alfred slumped forward, sobbing without sound. Elena covered her mouth, her body shaking. Dr. Rivera touched his shoulder. You gave him a chance. Not everyone gets that. Milo spent days in the ICU. Machines clicked and hissed. Tubes snaked around his small body. But slowly he began to stir. His fingers moved. His eyelids fluttered. And finally, one morning, he opened his eyes. Alfred was there, of course. He leaned in, eyes red but smiling. "Hey, soldier," he whispered. Milo blinked slowly. "I had a dream," he rasped. "I was on Mars." Alfred chuckled through tears. "You'll get there someday." Each day brought more strength. Milo sat up. He asked for soup. He wanted books again. The nurses adored him, calling him Space Captain Milo. Late one night, Alfred walked out onto the hospital's rooftop terrace. Snow had melted into puddles. The sky was clear. Stars were scattered like breadcrumbs. He looked up and whispered, "Thank you." It wasn't enough, but it was all he had. Behind him, Elena's voice rang out, "He asked for you." Alfred turned. I'll never leave his side. They walked back in together, under stars and steel and second chances. Spring returned as the jet descended back into the city Alfred once walked through with eyes lowered and hope fading. Now, he stepped onto the tarmac with Milo in his arms, lighter than a boy his age should be, but stronger in ways no chart could measure. Elena carried their bags as volunteers from the Devereux Foundation greeted them with soft smiles and heartfelt welcomes. A sleek black car waited at the curb. Alfred had protested the extravagance, but Catherine insisted. "He's a hero," she'd said over the phone. "He deserves a hero's return." Back in their modest apartment, neighbors lined the hall to welcome Milo home. Mrs. Ortiz from down the hall brought empanadas. Mr. Jenkins handed Alfred an envelope. Donations collected while they were gone. Milo waved shyly, his surgical mask still in place, and whispered thank yous. Inside the apartment, balloons floated and a banner read, "Welcome home, Space Captain." Alfred sat on the couch. Milo curled beside him. "You okay, soldier?" Milo nodded, eyelids heavy. "I missed our planet." Alfred smiled. "Me too." Days passed, then weeks. Milo returned to school part-time. The other kids treated him like a legend. Teachers gave him extra snacks and quiet time. He started drawing again, rockets, galaxies, comets, dreams. Alfred went back to the restaurant. He didn't need to work anymore. Catherine had insisted on a stipend, but he chose to. The kitchen felt different now. Not a cage, but a temple. Every plate scrubbed, every pan rinsed, was a prayer of thanks. On his first night back, the staff erupted into cheers. Mr. Enzo hugged him tight. "You're not just a janitor," he said. "You're a miracle, Al." One Friday afternoon, Catherine Devereux walked through the restaurant doors. She wore a navy coat and elegance like perfume. Alfred stepped out from the back, apron still on. "You look well," she said. "I'm tired," he said honestly, "but it's the best kind of tired." She smiled. "There's a donor appreciation dinner next month. You and Milo, our guest of honor." Alfred raised an eyebrow. "Us." "You reminded us all what perseverance looks like." He paused. "It wasn't just me. Elena, the doctors, the strangers who donated." She cut him off gently. "You carried the weight of the moon and never stopped walking." They shared a quiet moment. "I'll check the calendar," Alfred said. That night, Milo asked for a bedtime story. Not a book, a real story. "Tell me about Mom again," he said. Alfred ran his fingers through the boy's hair. "She once climbed a mountain just to prove she could, and when she got to the top, she screamed into the sky, 'I'm bigger than my fear.'" Milo smiled. "I'm bigger than mine, too." Alfred kissed his forehead. "Yes, you are." As Milo drifted asleep, Alfred sat in the dim room, listening to the sound of breathing. It was the sound of victory, and the beginning of everything new. The donor appreciation dinner was held in a ballroom glittering with soft chandeliers and warm laughter. Guests arrived in evening wear, champagne flutes clinking, but all eyes turned when Alfred entered with Milo at his side. Milo wore a small navy suit and his ever-present astronaut pin. He looked up at the crowd and squeezed Alfred's hand tighter. Elena followed behind, her smile radiant, arm hooked gently around Alfred's. Catherine Devereux met them at the door. "You're the last to arrive. Perfect timing. Everyone's been waiting." Alfred looked uneasy. "I'm no speaker." You already made the speech. With every dish you scrubbed and every night you stayed, she said. Just let them see you. The evening began with music and tributes. Photos of recipients and donors flickered across the screen. Then, the spotlight shifted to the front of the room. Catherine stepped up to the podium. Tonight, we honor those who have given and those who never stop believing. One story in particular captured our hearts. She gestured toward Alfred and Milo, a grandfather who washed dishes night after night to save his grandson's life, a boy who dreamed of the stars. Together, they climbed a mountain few dare approach. The audience stood as Alfred walked the stage. Elena helped Milo up the steps. The microphone stood tall and intimidating, but Alfred leaned in. I'm just a janitor, he said. I'm no hero, but I had a reason. He turned toward Milo. This boy, he gave me a reason to wake up, to work, to hope. You all helped us reach a place I couldn't even imagine before. Tears rolled down cheeks. Elena dabbed her eyes. Milo waved shyly. Alfred continued, voice steady. If you're out there wondering if it's worth it, the late nights, the loneliness, the grind, it is. Every second matters. Every kindness adds up. Thank you. A roaring ovation filled the room. Strangers reached for tissues. Even the staff wiped their eyes. Later that evening, Alfred stepped out onto the balcony. Milo was asleep in Elena's arms inside, exhausted from attention. Catherine joined him. You belong in places like this, Alfred. He looked out at the city skyline. I belong wherever he needs me. She nodded. Well, he's not the only one who needs you now. Alfred turned. What do you mean? She smiled. I'd like you to be the new community ambassador for the Devereux Foundation. Share your story. Visit families. Show them what resilience looks like. He hesitated. I clean dishes. You change lives, she replied. Alfred exhaled. If it helps just one more child, I'll do it. As the city lights sparkled below, Alfred felt the night settle around him. Not as a burden, but a blessing. Tomorrow, there would be more stories, more work, more hope, and he would be there for all of it. The first light of morning spilled gently through the thin curtains of the modest apartment. Alfred sat quietly in his worn armchair, a steaming cup of coffee cradled in his hands. The silence was different now, not heavy with worry, but soft and full of promise. Milo was still asleep in his bedroom, peaceful at last. The beeping machines and hospital alarms had been replaced by the steady rhythm of a child who'd been given a second chance. Alfred's phone buzzed with a message from Elena. Milo's latest scan looks great. The doctors are amazed. He's a fighter. He smiled, a lump rising in his throat. Weeks had passed since the transplant, and every day brought a small victory. Milo's laughter began to fill the apartment again, tentative at first, then bolder, like a comet reclaiming its path through the sky. Neighbors stopped by more often now, offering help, smiles, and stories of their own battles and triumphs. The community that had once seemed distant had become a tapestry of shared hope. At the restaurant, Alfred's role had shifted. No longer just a janitor who scrubbed dishes late into the night. He was now a beacon, a symbol of perseverance. Children from the neighborhood came by to see him, asking questions about rockets and stars, about hope and never giving up. One afternoon, as he wiped down a table, a small boy tugged at his sleeve. Are you really a hero, Uncle Alfred? Alfred chuckled softly. I don't know about heroes, but I do know this. When you love someone, you fight with everything you have. And that's what I did for Milo. Outside, the sun climbed higher, painting the world in warm gold. Alfred looked toward the horizon and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The road had been long and winding. The price had been steep. But love had been their compass, guiding them through every dark night to this new dawn. Alfred took a deep breath, steady and sure. This is just the beginning, he whispered. And with that, he stepped forward into the future, ready to face whatever came next. Thanks for watching this video. Do comment from which country are you watching this video.